Honest J. Nowak. Coming at you live. Alright. A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to Honest J. Nowak Graphix. So, for number 4 out of 7 that we're going to be doing today, for this little marathon session that I have set up here today on the 24th, we're going to go ahead and get ourselves all the way over to the Gran Turismo series, because I've said before that I would talk about it here on Graphix, so here we are. Gran Turismo Sport is what we're going to talk about today. And yes, I do realize that there is in fact going to be another Gran Turismo game coming soon. Gran Turismo 7. Well, let me just ask, first of all, what's the real 7? Is it Sport or 7? It's like there are two 7s at once. Maybe Sport is supposed to be different than the rest of the entire tangent that has been running so far on all PlayStation consoles. Since the late 90s, we've had Gran Turismo pretty much become the unofficial prime must-have title for any PlayStation console lovers all across the world. Anybody who's a fan of PlayStation might consider Gran Turismo, Crash Bandicoot, Spyro the Dragon, and then of course there are an abundance of other titles out there that remain PlayStation 4 standalone titles. Just like with Xbox, you have a choice between Halo, Forza Horizon, or even the majority of many other things out there. Not to mention Outlast. But when it comes to Gran Turismo Sport was indeed a game that I played on PS4, unlike, well, Gran Turismo 6, which came out in 2013. But yet I will say that, first of all, Gran Turismo Sport is a lot different than what 6 had in 2013 and 2014 and 2015. Because, well, when you get down to it, there's probably a lot of ways that you could look at it, but in any sense of the word, I will point out that there's been quite a lot of things out there that we've managed to see when it comes to video game development evolution. And GT Sport has pretty much become a big part of the technology that we seem to be seeing in more advanced games. For 2017, at the time, GT Sport was certainly a pretty unique piece. I won't really call it something that's as good as many other titles out there, but it is still a relatively good game out there if you're a fan of driving simulation games of all sorts. And these days there are tons of them that you can pick out. Other driving simulator based games out there are ones that would probably qualify as driving simulator games out there, as they have similar mechanics, but yet some companies out there are just not necessarily willing to rip each other off, especially at the height of the Copyright Act of '76. And not to mention the more recent Digital Millennium Copyright Act. So, it's fair to say that by these days we're not really going to be seeing rip-offs from each other, which is going to be good if you're looking for a racing title. Then you'll definitely find something more original in terms of feel, playability, quality, and sound design and graphical design by any means. And I've had the chance to play a ton of other racing games out there. Need for Speed, The Crew, and who could ever forget? F1 2020. Which, if you've seen in Megapix Weekly Season 2 especially, I've basically played that for quite some time actually. I will say that F1 2020 is probably much like what Gran Turismo had, except of course, well, it's different. Mostly because it was made by the famous English game designer, developer, publisher, Codemasters, which had become infamous in the 90s because of a lot of NES titles, garbage of all sorts that they made with those nice fancy gold-colored cartridges. But today, it does seem like Codemasters has fully redeemed themselves, and F1 2020 is one of a select few titles that I've seen and even played that actually does do pretty well. I won't really consider F1 2020 to be good probably as much as Gran Turismo, mostly because I've been so attached to it as a child. I've gotten to play a lot of Gran Turismo games out there, especially 4, 5, and 6. But when I've played Sport, I got a whole different feeling out of it. Especially throughout most of 2019, when I got to play it the most. It does basically have a lot of the same sort of things that take place, including tracks, cars that you get to pick from, and plenty of different licensing approval marks that you get to see. Plenty of copyrights and trademarks and registered logos and designs and other sorts of things would appear in the background sometimes, just as a way to show you that Sony has really gotten all the money they got to pay for royalties, to pay for licensing, to pay for any kind of attributes relating to getting the rights they need to make these games a possibility. And considering how many Gran Turismo games are already out by now, we could safely say that Sony has billions in store. Especially when it comes to developing. It costs a lot of money just to buy licenses for all these registered trademarks and all that. A lot of money. So, while I myself am not really looking forward to what I could be seeing, I can at least be grateful for what I got. Some mild sponsorships, some little pieces here and there that I do occasionally have. And then of course, well, Under Armour logo is right here showing. So it does show that I happen to have some sort of potential as someone who could hold sponsorship with another company. But when you get down to it though, Gran Turismo Sport is not necessarily just about the licensing. It is in fact about driving as a whole. It has an extensive digital driving school series that you can take at any time you want. It has itself a huge catalog of cars, but not quite as big as what Gran Turismo 6 had to offer. Maybe when we have 7 out on the PS5, we could probably see a lot more things developing within the Gran Turismo series over time. And who could ever forget? One of the biggest, more recent attributes about Gran Turismo that is very popular to this day is vision cars. Yeah, there are vision cars in this game too. GT Sport has a pretty extensive list coming from all sorts of companies around the world. Chevrolet, Cadillac, Subaru, Honda, Hyundai, Mazda, Ford, Infiniti. You pretty much get the idea. They have vision cars all over the place. Who could ever forget the SRT Tomahawk trio? Not to mention, the biggest, fastest, most powerful car in the entire game is the SRT Tomahawk X. That thing could go well over 450 miles per hour, which is a staggering speed. And that thing costs well over $1 million in game. But in real life, who even knows? It'll cost even more than that just to own. But to have a car that has nearly 2,900 horsepower in its engine and an amazing array of aerodynamics allow it to gain more speed faster than any other car combined. And to be able to stop on a literal dime because it's apparently got the most impressive power of braking in the world, as it can stop very quickly. So that right there is pretty much what you need to know. A GT game goes off the course, off the limits, and gives us some things that would so totally be illegal on today's streets. But then again, this is only just a simulator, so it's probably like nothing you'd find in real life. But yet it does tend to be accurate most of the time. There's of course a lot of special guests that show up, and I mean a lot of those. It's just like a traditional thing that we have with most other previous installments, and Sport does deliver on those things every now and then with special events and special sessions that are dedicated to some of the honorable traits of these people. I especially remember in part 6 where there was the famous Ayrton Senna, whom of course was indeed a Formula 1 racer who was born in 1960 and died in 1994 due to a wreck that happened on the track at one point. So, as tragic of an accident as that was, Senna's performance and career as an F1 driver was amazing for the time. But when you really get down to it, though, with today's technology and today's enhancements, today's capabilities in most consoles of the 8th and 9th generations, we would expect to see a lot more show up. And yet, GT Sport, while it does give us some things out there to look forward to, it doesn't really do a whole lot for us. As audiences, as fans of history, fans of legend and knowledge, we don't really get everything that we are looking for. So, it almost stands to reason that Sony was slacking off on this title. And I'd probably consider that to be one of a few things that I might find not so good about this game. But still, GT Sport, in comparison at least to most other titles, is an impressive, newer title that we got in 2017. And the fact that we're having a new title, which has been delayed many times over, we're probably going to be finding quite a lot around here. Maybe we'll see more GT7 when that comes out. I don't really know if I'd be able to get the chance to play that because of how long it's been delayed already and how much has already taken place, but I mean, that's just kind of what it is sometimes. And because I intend to retire from gaming in a while, it's just a whole big reason out there to try and avoid a lot of these titles that aren't even going to be out for years from now. So, that's just going to be all I'm going to talk about with this one in particular. While it is a good title, I won't really consider it to be very good by any means. Not great, but just good. Okay, by all means. So, if you want to see more, go down to my channel, then make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.